but then did release emails that were unearthed during the Sandusky investigation. What happened was Kaine was doing a review of Corbett's. Turns out, while her report on the Sandusky investigation was not particularly critical of Governor Corbett and his office per se, they came across gazillions of porn-laden emails that senior Attorney General staff were sending back and forth on government servers. And 8 of those people she outed. And there's a question about why she only outed those 8, etc. And we've kind of talked about that before on the show. Then it was referenced that there were judges involved. So Justice Castile of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, asked for the emails, and she initially declined, but then agreed to provide them. He then went ahead and outed a fellow justice, Seamus, or however you say his name, McCafferty from Philadelphia, who was a former cop turned municipal court judge turned Supreme Court justice. And what he released was 230. He was sent bench, maybe 2 or something like this, with his brother saying, hey, don't send these to my government account, which is kind of like the whole thing going on here, because I'm not judging any back and forth. I have no moral opposition to the use of pornography, nor do I have any reason to deny having ever actually looked at pornography myself. I think we can all come clean on that. I'm sure someone out there. I'm sure Don Stevens has probably read like the Conservationist magazine. It'd probably be pornography, so you can't even claim, Don, that's not the case. But my point is this: we've all maybe looked at some pornography. We may have all forwarded or joked around about these things. But of course, in the modern era, we know not to do it on our official email accounts. And there's a bigger issue, which the Chief Justice, I think, was trying to make, which was this comfortable and prosecutors creates an issue. And I think that was one of the issues. Well, then on Friday, Justice Aiken was drawn into the fray when he basically made a letter open to the public, which he also sent to the Judicial Committee, Disciplinary Committee, indicating that McCafferty had called him and basically threatened him with the release of emails that Aiken had received, and that if he didn't do something to slow the Chief Justice down and get him to reverse his position, et cetera, something bad was going to happen to him. Now, of course, then McCafferty came back and said, well, no, I had a conversation with him. I was giving him a heads up that I was being asked about him and that this stuff was coming out and that it was going to be bad for him, and he thanked me for the heads and I have on Facebook, if you just go back a couple articles, something that Philadelphia Inquirer wrote a while back that sort of highlights the personal animus between Justice Castile and Justice McCafferty. And apparently that goes back some time. Although it's not ancient, it's been creeping up and growing ever since they started serving on the court together. Now, I'm going to make a couple observations, and these are just my observations. First of all, I met Castile in an informal setting one time when I was in college, and he was actually running for Supreme Court. And I was I don't think it was the president of the College of Republicans, and we went to a ox roast at Meadville, Pennsylvania at the fundraiser, and he sat at our table. And we met him, and I think he gave a little talking, to the party about why he should be a justice. And I say we had a chance to sit and talk with him as students, and he always seemed like a very interesting and nice guy. Some of his opinions have been very intellectual on the bench, and while he is definitely law and order and tough on crime, he has certainly been very protective in things. So I have a very positive view of him. McCafferty, I don't know personally, nor do I have a strong view, except to say that I think you hear a lot of things about him. On the other hand, Justice Aiken, who was from Cumberland County, is a well-known quantity in this area. And if he says that McCafferty told him or threatened him or however he described it in his letter, I would take, on a thumbnail sketch, I would take Aiken's view of the conversation first, just knowing the integrity that he's always brought to the office. So if it was between Castile and Aiken and McCafferty, I'd pick Castile and Aiken over. So if there's any guidance in that, if in fact, and this is the heart of the matter, if in fact the justice was willing to threaten another justice and basically say, do something or get this taken care of or something bad's going to happen to you and I'll give you till noon or else this stuff's leaking out. If that's all true, then that person should be removed from the bench without fail, and they should suffer the consequences of that. I know in my own personal situation, I chose to resign my capacity as an attorney and deal with course. But unfortunately, in the past, Pennsylvania's had problems with Ralph Larson in the past, having been removed from the bench by force. So who knows what'll happen there? But those are my observations on the matter, and I'm just think it's worth talking about. I'm also interested in seeing how Corbett continues to. A couple of people have resigned. My understanding is he still is using Harley as his one of his campaign people, and of course that leads me to move here. By the way. It turns out that there's some stock imagery on the bottom of his website. And you have to remember, he made a big deal out of the fact that Wolf had an actor, and they hadn't vetted the actor, and it turns out that this guy had actually appeared in a porn video, and they were making a big deal out of the fact that how dare Wolf allow a person who used to act in a porn video, apparently a very raunchy one, appear in an ad allegedly supporting him. So they pulled that ad. But in the meantime now, it turns out on the footer of Corbett's website is a picture of Corbett talking to a group of people who turn out not to be real people. It turns out they're actually photoshopped from stock imagery, including a black female who is just glowing and looking at Corbett like he's the God's gift to the earth. And you have to just go look at it because, they're calling him out on it and saying, how dare you, take a stock image of a black woman and make her into one of your supporters to try to show that black women support you. But, here's the reality, and that's why any of these campaigns saying these things to each other is just absolutely ridiculous. For Corbett to reach out and say that Wolf, used a porn act at him, who cares? And if Corbett wants to use stock imagery and make it look like there's people supporting him, well, you know what? Great. That's what we do these days in the media. There's not a girl in a magazine, a man in a magazine, a family in a magazine that wasn't photoshopped, staged, or otherwise created because we have a certain desire in our media to see a certain level of imagery. And, of course, if any campaign is going to compete with that, they need to use actors and stock imagery and high-tech wizardry in order to make it work. So I'd say shame on both camps for making fun of the other. But if you want to go with who started it, it could be Corbett started it first. Of course, Wolf was taking pot shots at him about all the porn that was flying around the Attorney General's office. Of course, I'm still curious to see, and I really want to know. See, they're trying to hide the ball from us. I would like to know who else was on all these porn emails. Which county prosecutors, which county judges, which county defense attorneys, anybody that worked for the government, obviously, using their official accounts. Because anybody that was dumb enough to use their official accounts, and, of course, you have to think about the standpoint of being a woman working in any of these offices with the misogynistic porn and some of it being clearly derogatory towards female employees and implying that, secretaries give blowjobs and things like that, and or things of a racial nature. I think it's fair public game, and I think the fact that the Attorney General's office has it, it should be released to the media so they can pick through it and the clouds can settle where they may. Now, let's turn to the EU for a minute. By the way, if you did want to jump in, 717-916-5189. I don't know if you guys have any theories on this stuff or I guess I'll say theories or interest in this stuff. But the EU debt crisis, remember Greece? Remember the whole idea there's a problem over there? Well, as the economy is slowed down, has slowed down, we're looking at a couple of problems. First of all, Greece. Just let me read this quote. There's strong resistance inside Germany by economists such as Hans Werner Sinn of Munich University, saying that the European Central Bank has become too accommodating and its plan to buy sovereign debt are illegal, which is being litigated, by the way, right now over there. He reckons that the Eurozone bailouts of the past 4 years have created a moral hazard, allowing feckless Mediterranean countries to get away with minimal reforms and only limited fiscal discipline. Moral hazard is the idea that, if you run up all your credit card debt and every time you do it, your mom bails you out, well, you're just going to keep running up credit card debt because at a certain point, you kind of know that no matter what happens, mom's going to bail you out. Well, that happens in countries too. If you know that at the end of the day, the government's going to bail you out because you're, quote, too big to fail, or in this case, if you're a country in the European Union and you know that Germany is going to bail you out, well, you just go ahead and keep doing the bad things. But here's what's going on. The economy is slowing down. The German economy is slowing down. The other areas are slowing down or have slowed down. They're losing all kinds of wealth in their stock market, but they're also starting to experience deflation. And we may yet experience deflation here as well. Deflation is basically the concept or the idea that instead of moving forward, you actually move back. Things become worth less. Money deflates. Well, deflation in the value of money and what it'll buy is not a good thing. Inflation, too much inflation is a bad thing, but deflation can kill economy just as fast. So with that in mind, deflation is not a great thing. Well, that's what they're starting to experience over there. And so, keep your eyes and ears open. Keep your eyes and ears open. You guys are getting some bad connectivity? What? I didn't know anybody's getting some bad connectivity. Interesting. Signal sounds fine to me, but what do I know? Maybe, I thought it sounded pretty good, but what can I do? I just get what's in the headphone. I don't always get what goes out on the internet. So anyhow, long story short, this deflation, as things get worth less, it becomes harder to pay off your debts. Your debts get worse, more difficult to pay off over time, and unfortunately, that's not a good thing because as your debts get more difficult to pay off, you can't really work your way out of debt the same way we have historically because inflation actually decreases the cost of debt over the long term. So keep an eye on what's going on in Europe because that contagion could continue to spread in the world economy. And we know we're going to have big issues, as you know, with the world economy because Africa is being ravaged, which is going to hurt a lot of different economic bases. So in my estimation, the economy is probably not going to do well at some point unless Europe can pull itself out of this crisis. So, all right. Well, anyhow, I'm going to wrap up tonight's show a little early because I think that's sufficient to hit on all my points. And if we're having a little connectivity issues, we'll work on that. I'm going to have to try. Have a great night, and I will see you next Wednesday at 8 p.m.